we have Senator Scott Herndon, District 1. That's up in Bonner and Boundary County. Let's bring him up here if he's available. Hopefully he is. Senator went through a Supreme Court case. There he is. Went through a Supreme Court case on the Second Amendment. And because they lost that case, thankfully he's a senator, so he could do something directly about it and write some legislation to help right that wrong. So, Senator, first, welcome to the program, and I'd like to give us a little bit of background on the case, that Supreme Court case, and then what leads you to your new piece of legislation for this year.
Okay, you bet, Matt. Thanks for having me on the program. So the case started up in Sandpoint, which is near where I am. That's my local town, local city. And there is a public park called War Memorial Field owned by the city of Sandpoint. And every summer they have a special event there called the Festival at Sandpoint, which is actually very enjoyable, great for the community. Basically, there's a football field, bleachers, and a stadium, and the city issues a permit for a private organization to use the field, and they have bands come in. It's basically 2 weeks, and for 3 nights of the week or 4 nights of the week for these 2 weeks, they have concerts in the evenings. And so they charge money to get into the concert series, and in 2019, they started wanding people at the gate. So as you would come in with your ticket, they have their own security, again, private organization, using a public park of the city of Sandpoint, and they're wanding people and screening for firearms. So basically, this concert series has been going on for decades, and then they suddenly started enforcing a firearm ban. So we decided to test the legality of that ban, because generally speaking, in Idaho code, we have what are called firearm preemption laws, which say that cities and counties and other local governments cannot regulate the carry of firearms. We're a true constitutional carry state. There's very few places that you cannot go with your firearm. And the preemption law basically says that the Idaho state legislature controls the laws over where you can and cannot carry, and no local government can override the state legislature and their control of the laws. So it was our opinion that being a public park owned by a municipality, a city, we did not want to allow them through a special event to prohibit carry of a firearm in this public park. That was our position. That's what we sued over. So we challenged this arrangement between this private organization called the Festival at Sandpoint and the city of Sandpoint, which is obviously a municipal corporation, a local government. We challenged the arrangement where they have this event, and allowing the private organization to control the park, they allowed the private organization to prohibit firearms. And we took that all the way to the Supreme Court of the state of Idaho. And the Supreme Court of the state of Idaho, I think they fairly interpret Idaho law. I don't think they do much in the way of judicial activism. Even in the preemption section of our code, basically says that private property is private property, and the way the Supreme Court interpreted that is, even though the underlying ground is owned by the city, the Festival at Sandpoint, the private organization, is technically leasing that ground, even if it's just for a few days. And when they lease that ground, it takes on the characteristics of private property. And of course, we always allow people on their private property to dictate their own terms, and that is right. And so the Supreme Court's opinion is that statute is clear as it is, that the minute they lease it, even if it's a super short-term lease, even if the lessor doesn't get total control of the property, that for that event, it is private property. And so what we want to do is come up with a solution legislatively to address that scenario. Because what it did is opened up a Pandora's box of possibilities. And it's really that Pandora's box especially that we want to address. So, and I'll give you an example. In the city of Sandpoint, the farmers market also uses a private park, downtown Sandpoint, Farm Park. They don't charge people to enter. It looks like it's public property. People can walk through it. And we don't want a farmers market, which is a private organization, to suddenly say, hey, for the duration of our farmers market, at the boundaries of the farmers market, you cannot carry your firearm. And so there's a whole list of possibilities. Boise, they hold their farmers market on a downtown city street on a sidewalk. And all of a sudden you could say, hey, this block of this city, this organization that's private, because they're technically leasing this public ground, we're going to allow them to, at the moment, under that Supreme Court interpretation, theoretically, they could say no firearms. So they could have a guy at the front, a sign at the front, and screen people for firearm carry.
Hey,
And
Scott,
we don't want that
real
to
quick,
happen. So we're going to try to thread the needle here and find a way to solve that problem while respecting private property rights, true private property rights. And that's the challenge this session. So that's what we're going to try to get done.
That was my question, was the ramifications for the rest of the constitutional law. I mean, this is kind of a canary in the coal mine kind of situation.
Well, interestingly enough, if we look at the rest of the Constitution, the First Amendment is a great example. There is a great case out of Portland, Oregon in the Ninth Circuit. So this is in federal court, where a group used part of a private park. It's called Gathright versus Portland, to have a wedding. And then they prohibited, there was a guy who came in and he was actually a gospel preacher. So he was handing out tracts and wanted to pass out information because it's a public park, but they're having this private event. And they prohibited him, and the police came and threatened him with the trespass citation. And he sued, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said, no, that's his First Amendment right. That's a quintessential public forum, and that forum never loses its nature. So in constitutional law, apparently there's no question when it comes to the First Amendment, but then it's a totally different law when it comes to the Second Amendment. These two amendments, number one and number two, are treated totally differently by the courts.
Right.
And that is very interesting and amazing to me.
Yeah. No, you're right, and it shouldn't. They should be treated the same. I mean, this is the rule of law. It's the rule of law for our land, and it's survived 250 years or so far. So we got to keep it going. Scott, we've run out of time here. I want people to know I want the best way for people to follow you and to find you on social media.
Okay, so you'll find me on Twitter or X at Herndon for Idaho. And I will be very active there during the session. I'll be doing a lot of live video and video clips, and I'm daily posting. And you can sign up for my newsletter by going to my website, herndonforidaho.com. That's Herndon, F-O-R, Idaho.com. Right on that homepage, there's a sign-up link. So you'll just scroll down just below that pretty picture of my family and click sign up for my newsletter, and you're going to get my email updates directly.
Fantastic. Thank you, Scott. I wish you the best down there, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds great, Matt. Thanks.